They found my tent a week later, exactly where I'd left it. The zipper was closed. My backpack was still inside. My phone was still standing where I'd placed it, facing the tree line. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken branches, and no footprints leading away from the campsite. Not mine, not anyone else's. Just an empty tent in the middle of the Appalachian forest, as if the person who slept there had simply stopped being there. None of that crossed my mind when I drove out into the mountains. Back then, it felt like an ordinary decision, the kind you make when your thoughts won't shut up and you start believing silence might fix you. I told my boss I'd be off-grid for a few days, packed light, shared my route, and headed into the backcountry where a cell signal fades out quietly and never comes back. I wasn't chasing adventure. I wasn't testing myself. I just wanted to be alone long enough to hear my own thoughts again. That's why the first warning was so easy to ignore. The first 3 days passed cleanly. Hike during daylight, set camp before sunset, eat, sleep, repeat. The forest felt neutral, not friendly, not threatening, just present. That kind of quiet makes you careless. It convinces you that nothing is paying attention. The fourth morning was cold enough that my breath fogged the air as soon as I unzipped the tent. I stepped out, stretched, and looked down. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Human. Bare. They were pressed deep into the damp ground beside my tent. Clear toes, long arches, heels sunk heavier than the rest. Whoever made them hadn't rushed or stumbled. The steps were evenly spaced, calm, leading straight from the tree line into my campsite. And then they stopped. The final print sat inches from the tent wall, deeper than the others, like someone had stood there for a moment, facing inward, facing the place where my head rested while I slept. I searched the ground around it, expecting to see a turn, a continuation, something that explained where they went next. There was nothing. No retreat, no disturbance, just leaves and silence. I told myself to leave. I meant it. I started packing fast, hands clumsy, heart beating harder than it should have. But another thought kept interrupting, quieter, steadier. If someone is walking barefoot out here at night, I need to know who. Curiosity still felt reasonable, necessary even. By afternoon, I'd convinced myself to stay one more night, not out of courage, out of proof. I set my phone on a small stand I carried for trail photos and aimed it toward my tent, making sure the tree line was visible behind it. I checked the angle twice, then again. If this is nothing, I said out loud, I'll know by morning. Sleep came light and fractured. Every small sound pulled me halfway awake. Leaves shifting, branches snapping somewhere deeper in the woods. The forest doing what forests do, except now I was listening too closely. Morning felt like relief. I unzipped the tent and looked down immediately. The footprints were back. Closer. Fresher. I grabbed the phone and climbed back inside, hands unsteady, pulse racing. The recording began with darkness. Long minutes of nothing happening. Trees swaying gently, shadows breathing. I almost relaxed. Then, deep in the frame, something stepped out from between the trees. The figure didn't emerge all at once. It stepped forward slowly, as if the forest had been hiding it piece by piece. It was tall, unnaturally tall, its shoulders rising higher than they should have, its arms hanging too low, almost brushing the ground. The proportions were wrong in a way that made my eyes resist understanding what they were seeing. It stopped a few feet from my tent. The phone didn't capture details well in the dark, but I could tell enough. The head was long, smooth, stretched upward like an egg turned on its end. It didn't tilt or turn the way a person's would. It just stayed there, facing the tent, perfectly still. Then the sound started. At first, it was barely audible, a thin, breathy whisper layered under the night noise. Not loud enough to form words, but steady, intentional. The kind of sound meant for someone standing very close. The figure leaned in slightly, as if directing that whisper at the fabric of my tent. And then, the zipper moved. I felt my stomach drop as I watched myself emerge from the tent. Slow, controlled, like I wasn't waking up, just transitioning. I stood upright in front of the thing, feet planted, arms hanging loose at my sides. I didn't hesitate. I didn't react. I just stood there. The whisper grew louder, not clearer, just closer. The figure bent down until its head hovered beside mine, and I saw my own body tilt slightly, offering an ear. Whatever it was saying, it wasn't rushed. It felt practiced, as if this wasn't the first time. The image distorted suddenly. Lines tore through the frame. The sound warped into a low, grinding hum, rising fast. For a split second, the screen flared white, too bright for night, too sharp to be moonlight. And then everything cut out. The recording ended there. No fade, no warning. I sat there in the tent, phone in my hands, trying to force memory into place. I remembered lying down. I remembered being cold. I did not remember standing outside. I did not remember whispering back. That absence felt heavier than fear. The rest of the day passed in fragments. I packed, I unpacked. I walked a short distance down the trail and stopped, staring at the ground like it might give me permission to leave. Every reasonable thought told me to go. But another thought followed it closely. If I leave now, I never find out what happened to me. By late afternoon, curiosity had hardened into something stubborn. I stayed. I told myself it was control, that if I understood it, it couldn't happen again. Before nightfall, I set the phone up the same way as before, aimed at the tent, checking the angle with obsessive care. This time, I planned not to sleep. I lay there fully dressed, eyes open, breathing slow. Minutes dragged, hours blurred. My body grew heavy in a way I didn't expect, like gravity was increasing 1 degree at a time. I blinked once, just once. When my eyes opened again, the forest outside was completely silent, and I knew, without checking the time, that something had already gone wrong. And they started looking for me on the third day, not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing did. I didn't call, I didn't message, I didn't show up for work. For someone who'd given a clear return date, silence was the first red flag. By the end of the week, a search team was moving through the area I'd marked on my route. They found the campsite first. The tent was still standing. The zipper was closed. My backpack was inside, exactly where I'd left it. Food untouched, no signs of animals, no signs of a struggle. It looked less like a place someone had disappeared from and more like a place someone had simply paused in. They searched the ground carefully. Around the tent, along the trail, in widening circles. There were no footprints leading away. Not mine, not anyone else's. The soil was soft enough to hold impressions, yet there was nothing to follow. That was when they found the phone. It was still on the stand, angled toward the tent and the tree line behind it. The battery was dead, but the last recording was intact. They charged it enough to watch. At first, it was exactly what they expected. Darkness, trees shifting slightly, the tent unmoving. Minutes passed. Nothing unusual. Then the zipper moved. I stepped out of the tent, barefoot, whispering something they couldn't understand. My movements were calm, controlled. I didn't look around. I didn't hesitate. I stood facing the trees, speaking softly to empty air. There was no tall figure, No shape between the trunks, just me. The image began to distort. Thin lines cut through the frame. The audio shifted into a low, rising hum that drowned out my voice. The hum grew louder, deeper, almost vibrating through the recording. Then the screen flared white. The video ended abruptly. They searched for days after that, expanded the grid, checked ravines, streams, animal paths, brought in dogs. Nothing picked up my scent beyond the campsite. There were no tracks, no torn ground, no indication I'd gone anywhere at all. Officially, the report lists me as missing. Unofficially, no one had a theory that fit the facts. The phone was returned to my family. The tent was taken down. The forest closed over the clearing the way it always does. Quietly, without leaving a mark. What stays with them isn't what they saw in the video. It's the sound. They say the whisper doesn't match my voice. Not completely. And buried beneath the hum, just before the flash, there's a second pattern. A rhythm that doesn't belong to wind, electronics, or interference. A cadence, as if something else was speaking at the same time. And whatever answered it never came back out of the trees. If this story unsettled you, leave a like and let the shadows know. Subscribe for more tales you shouldn't hear after dark. And if you've seen something you can't explain, tell us in the comments. We're always listening.